The most disappointing parts of the Miami Dolphins start of 2025 is blank. We're getting into that and much more here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Welcome to the Wednesday, September 24th episode of Locked On Dolphins. Just finished up our most recent squad show with Jeff Zuniga and with Jim Grieshaber. We do that post-games live for an hour, and then we also do it once during the week, kind of get ready for the next game. It's a new addition to all of our already pre-existing Locked On programming. It happens on YouTube live. It also goes into your audio feed as a longer program. So in case you're jonesing for more Miami Dolphins talk and some altering opinions, I know sometimes me getting up here on the soapbox, I can tend to beat some talking points into the ground. I get a chance to hear some other people chime in. In addition to our crossover Thursdays, tomorrow we have John Butchko of Locked On Jets setting the stage for Monday Night Football. Somebody's getting a win. Right? It's the Denzel Washington meme. I'm from around the way. I'm leaving with something. Somebody getting a win. Somebody is getting a win to close the first 4 weeks of the 2025 NFL season. The Dolphins, the part of the doubleheader on Monday night. So before we jump full on into Jets, right? Because the Dolphins were off today. You get the extra day because you play on Monday instead of on Sunday. So it's the last of like the weird limbo days because you had the game that ended on Thursday the week prior and now on Monday. Things that I think we have a few of them we're going to get into. We're going to get into what I felt my biggest personal disappointment was based off my own assessment of the team. We're going to get into the emerging Mike McDaniel excuse that is starting to set off some alarm bells for me, as far as the potential Game of Thrones, chaos is a ladder element of this team, where it takes you back to the early chapters of the Stephen Ross era, right? Where there's a whole bunch of infighting and the focus is on self-preservation instead of moving in the same direction from top to bottom organizationally. The Athletic, Jeff Howe from The Athletic just did a poll of NFL executives across the league. And they voted on the top 8 front offices in football. Spoiler alert, the Dolphins didn't make the cut. The Philadelphia Eagles and Baltimore Ravens were the top 2. But the commonality, the common theme, the quote was, the best organizations in the league have a unified vision of a direction of who and what they want to be. And there's some continuity that's earned that allows those standards and expectations to become well-established and everybody knows their job. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's the first thing that I think is the direction that the Dolphins, and we touched on it yesterday a little bit. You could do a whole week's worth of programming on it, but we're in season, right? Like now's not really a great time unless they make significant football operations changes. There's been too many additions to pivot your direction. And I feel like there's a part of me that feels we're past the point of no return. As far as it's a lot easier for everyone to be aligned when everybody starts with the same end in mind. Instead of, we're going to start with a vision, but then this guy's going to leave. And we're going to fire this guy, and we're going to bring this guy in, and this guy's going to be here to prioritize this guy, and then we're going to go get these kinds of players. But then we're going to change our mind a few years later and say, I'm going to swing the pendulum back the other way. Like it's messy. It's the first thing that I think is this football operation that lost its way. I don't know you can backtrack your way out of it. Now, the team is going to have a chance to do that by winning football games. but it needs to start in a hurry, and it needs to start on Monday night against the Jets. It's the first thing that I think. I know I was asked this on the Joe Rose show yesterday in the morning with Joe Rose and Omar Kelly, and it was the most disappointing unit. And I think through my own expectations, it becomes complicated because we've talked and are going to continue to exhaust the play and microanalyze the play of Tua Tagovailoa, right? It's not to the standard. Like it's one thing when you already play with, like, we have a very unique script and formula for how our offense operates. But when you can't fulfill that, it's disappointing. Like the interior offensive line with what you aspired for Jonas Savaiinaia to be, what you aspired for James Daniels to be, and obviously James Daniels is hurt. And I'm not going to judge James Daniels as a signing. It was a 3-year contract until we see James Daniels on the field. Because he could very easily miss the 4 weeks, come back, play 13, and then play the next 2 years and be a great player for the Dolphins, in which case it would be a successful signing, right? I want to be mad, but I want to be mad at the right things at the right time. Still wait and see. But through the first 3 weeks, this unit has not provided upgrades for you in the way that you thought, hoped, or wanted that maybe it would. That's disappointing. On top of all of it, I do believe you've got a skill group that can still dictate terms better than almost anybody across the league from a speed perspective and how you can triangulate speed at different spots, especially if you get Achane and Ollie Gordon out on the field. And now you got a downhill presence between the tackles with a speed element who can also run outside. You're kind of replicating some of the +1 elements of the run game because you're with quarterbacks. Now, quarterbacks are special with it because they can add it within one body. A name like Lamar Jackson, right? His explosive profile as a runner and by design runs with the quarterback means that we can run downhill if we have Derrick Henry, or Lamar can pull the ball and bounce outside, and they've got an extra hat in the run game because they have the quarterback is involved in the run scheme. The Dolphins do not have that luxury with their current situation, but they can create that similar inside-outside stress simultaneously, right? So I think the offense, and it's been a little bit of everything. There's been attention to detail. There's been operational stuff. There's been play call tendencies. There's been missed throws. There's been drops. There's been missed blocks and missed assignments when you have dialed up shots. There's been all of it. And that's why, for me, the most disappointing unit is the offensive side of the ball. It's a shame. If you got rid of the kick return for a touchdown and you got rid of the roughing the punter in week 3, special teams might be the single most drastically improved unit on the roster. It probably still is, but they've had 2 backbreaking mistakes that have directly played a hand in you losing football games. And then when those mistakes have happened, the ball goes back to the offense, and you ask the offense, where there's all the money invested and all of your perceived best players are invested in your 4th year of the system, and you ask them to bail you out. And they haven't done it so far, which makes the offense, in my mind, the most disappointing unit. Although, make no mistake, no turnovers, dead last in scoring defense, 66% of drives defensively for the Dolphins ending in scores. It's the pressure. I think they have 1 quarterback knockdown, their highest blitz rate in the league, and they're amongst the league's worst in pressure percentage. It's disappointing. But when you look at where the money's spent and what your identity is supposed to be and where your mastery is supposed to be, I think there's only one answer for the most disappointing thing. I think that. We're going to get into more, including this emerging Mike McDaniel talking point. We're going to get to that next here, Locked on Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. It has more IAHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat each and every detail. Mazda brings the same intention for how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season, including football season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. I've seen this twice now, and now you've got my attention. And it's both been by NFL insider people. The first one came from Tom Pelisseri, went on the Rich Eisen show and talked about Mike McDaniel and Stephen Ross's perspective on what they are or are not going to do. Okay. It happens once. You catch my interest. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder who you talked to. But then it happened again. It happened with James Palmer, who joined James Palmer's NFL media personality insider. And he was on Steve Smith's podcast. And they were talking about Tyreek Hill. And the exact same talking point came up. They said, now you have my attention. And the talking point was this: Mike McDaniel is calling an offense to prevent the quarterback from getting hit. And that is a limiting factor in every way, shape, or form. And this is when you talk about the Game of Thrones style chaos and self-preservation. I'm not saying Mike said this, but there are those who would have interest in Mike McDaniel remaining as the head coach of the Dolphins that would want the version of the truth to be Mike McDaniel's handcuffed by having to call an offense where its quarterback can't get hit. And there's multiple things. I want to be very clear here. Multiple things can be true at the same time. Okay. And I think there's some truth to the way that you play and call a game with Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback, with the limitations, but then also the restrictions, is different than what you would if you had Josh Allen, Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, right? Guys that have those extra elements, whether it's power or speed or explosiveness, athletically, dynamic. You don't have that element. You're a rhythmic, timing, precision passer, and right now, those elements don't exist either, which is why it's so frustrating. But this is where I'm not sure I believe this to be the sole root of the problem. Is it a part of the problem? Yeah, I think that's totally fair to say. But here's why I don't know that I believe it is the sole root of the problem. You're calling an offense right now in which Tua is holding the ball longer than he's ever held it under Mike McDaniel. That's inside of structure. That's outside of structure. That's inside the pocket. That's outside the pocket. That's on scrambles. You name it. In every measure, Tua is holding the ball longer now than he has in any of the first three seasons. And you can talk about under center rate versus shotgun and pistol. You can talk about play action rate. Those things are all overwhelmingly down, right? The under center rate from 22 to 25 is overwhelmingly down. We're in the gun more. The play action rate's down to 18%. That's less than half of what it was when Mike McDaniel's offense first got here in 2022. Do I believe that you're running less nakeds and less bootlegs and less back to the defense play fakes to allow Tua and his reaction timing to avoid hits and disperse the football to take hits off the quarterback? Yes, I think part of that is true. But I'm watching this team dial up max protection shot plays, and we can't drive the ball down the field. And when we do, we're not making the catch, or we're running double deep outs on the same side of the field to get lined up to throw that way, and we can't connect it to save our lives. But you're calling it. So for me, it's okay. We're holding the ball longer. We're doing some things structurally differently that maybe take some of that surprise element away and allow you to see things as they develop. But that is in and of itself ignoring, I think, a couple different things about what they have called, even when if the objective is to take hits off the quarterback. This team's never going to be a quarterback or run team with Tua Tagovailoa as the quarterback. But they are a team that runs boot action, and they've started a number of drives with boot action and have that slide into the flat. And Tua's got to make a decision. And Tua not making decisions as fast as he did, and them they don't have the schemed throws either. You've seen them pop up every now and again. But it's not like they're screen gaming to death and spamming the screen game like they did in 2024. They're not even leaning on the run game, right? They got the least amount of runs. They're just doing straight drop back passing. I remember 2 years ago, we were sitting here begging them to have to work on some drop back passing elements to add into the offense to go with all the play action stuff. From 22 to 23, we begged them to have a screen game. So for me, I hear what you're saying with that argument. And I think there's validity to that argument as far as what you're limited in doing. There's limitations with all quarterbacks in what you can and can't do. And Tua's script is more narrow than others because of the outside of structure athleticism. And then I think it's fair to say I'm not going to run a QB draw on 3rd and 3 and put Tua out there to take a hit and get tackled. You're not going to do that. I don't know how much I full on believe, hey, Mike McDaniel can't do his job well because Tua is limited and they don't want him having hits. Do I believe that's part of the calculus here? Sure. But I don't buy that as an all-encompassing thing. And if that is an all-encompassing thing, I don't know that helps Mike McDaniel's case in the assessment and assignment of blame when Mike McDaniel's the one who knocked on Stephen Ross's door per Tua Tagovailoa when he signed his contract extension, saying Mike went to Steve Ross per little birdies, in Tua's words, not mine, and asked him to get the deal done. Right? We're 13 months removed from that. It's like that's not the flex you think it is. Like wherever that is coming from, and you've heard it from two separate NFL media people, insider people within a 4-day stretch, I don't think that's a coincidence. Wherever it's coming from. Again, I'm not saying it's coming directly from Mike McDaniel. But that is a talking point that has emerged with the intent of contextualizing the root of the problem is somebody else. And I would agree right now that part of the problem is Tua Tagovailoa. But Tua Tagovailoa is not the entire problem. Now, he's a bigger piece of the puzzle as a problem than what I expected he would be based off my standard expectation for him across 5 years of play in the NFL versus what he's played like. And that's why this lot of ball game that we have left in 2025 is so important. It's another thing that I think here on this Wednesday, September 24th episode of Locked On Dolphins, we got one more coming, and it's the 2026 NFL Draft. I thought about doing a whole show. Some of you guys get weird when I do draft content in September. Even though I was a draftnik before I covered the Dolphins. I've been a lifelong Dolphins fan, but the Dolphins many a year pushed me into draft focus come October and November, right? We're going to do a quarter season marks show next week where we'll get into GMs and coaches and performances and all that kind of stuff. It'll be one show out of the week. But I do have some thoughts on some names that I think are at least relevant to start thinking and keeping an eye on for the 2026 NFL Draft for a team in Miami that could certainly use a needle-moving elite player. The good news is I think there's a lot of them in 26. That's next. Make sure you guys stick with us. The NFL season is here. FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a cannot-miss offer with FanDuel right now. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it fits however you like to play, whether that's player props, spreads, building a same-game parlay, or jumping in live as the action unfolds. Dolphins right now favored by 2.5 points at home against the Jets in week 4, if that catches your eye and tickles your fancy. The game is exciting more so than ever with FanDuel, whether you're watching your favorite team play or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy. It's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. I think it's a great year to have an early draft pick. If that is indeed what the cards hold for the Miami Dolphins. Some elite names, some elite prospects at different positions that I think all of which are relevant for Miami. Rueben Bain will stay right there at Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Hurricanes. What a monster of a pass rusher he is. Holy smokes. And you got Bradley Chubb potentially as a cap casualty. He's got a $31 million cap charge next year. You could save $8.5 million of that up front. You could save more than that if you split it as a post-June 1st cut. If they continue to lose and they are in a position to offload at the deadline, that is a player I would be interested in seeing if there was a market to trade at the trade deadline. Bradley Chubb. I had somebody ask me, and it's a valid question. Bradley Chubb's had a sack in each one of the first 3 games versus Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson. And I said I thought Jalen Phillips has had the best season to date out of those 3, while Bradley Chubb has had a sack in each one of the first 3 games of the season. Why is that? The pressure rates, the pass rush win rate, your opportunities on true dropbacks. What percentage of double teams are you getting versus single teams? Or how often are you asked to be blocked by tight ends? Bradley Chubb's sack to pressure ratio is significantly closer to a 1-for-1, where Jalen Phillips hasn't had the sacks, the smaller amount of plays that actually result in a finish, but he has been a much more disruptive player with consistency, snap in and snap out, even if he's not getting the quarterback to the ground. When Bradley shows up around the quarterback, he's made the play, but the snaps in between, in my eyes, in studying the film, are much fewer and far between in which he's creating that disruption. But Rueben Bain is a monster for the University of Miami. He's not the only edge rusher either. There's TJ Parker from Clemson. There is Keldrick Falk, who just had an awesome game against Oklahoma. It was very disruptive. I think those are 3 elite edge rush prospects that should absolutely have your attention. David Bailey from Texas Tech is another one who's had a strong season. But you want to talk about like blue chippers. Rueben Bain is a man possessed. If you haven't seen his notebook from before the Notre Dame game, it's a family-friendly show. Expletive ND written Joker style all over the inside of his notebook. I love a good pass rusher that's got a little bit of unhinged to him. I think that's a healthy place to be. Now, if you wanted to continue to build the trenches, I think you can have conversations on both sides of the ball. Some elite names. And I know the Dolphins drafted Kenneth Grant. And I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here and dump on Kenneth Grant because he doesn't have a splash play in the first 3 weeks of the season while Tyler Warren's having good performances for the Indianapolis Colts, right? I think you tip the cap to have the Colts have used Tyler Warren. I think you tip the cap to Tyler Warren. I think Kenneth Grant's going to be fine long-term. And I don't think it's fair to cast out a guy off of the first 3 games of his rookie season. But you do have Peter Woods, defensive tackle from Clemson, has some really freakish ability as far as snap to snap versatility, alignment versatility, disruption. He's more of a disruptor than Kenneth Grant. But man, if you really wanted to have like an identifying, we're going to be strong up the middle between Jordan Phillips, another disruption player in Peter Woods, and a guy in Kenneth Grant who can kind of do it all as well, and a supersized player with plus athleticism. He's 20 and a half years old. That's a name to watch for sure. Francis Mauigoa, the right tackle from University of Miami. Mauler, I think right tackle is going to unfortunately be a need for Miami with the latest Austin Jackson development, and there's 1 year left on that contract. I think that's a name that you got to look at. Some people think Jennings Dunker from Iowa is an inside player at the next level, 6'5", 315. I think he could play tackle. He's a displacement guy, a lot of aggressiveness at the line of scrimmage. You got options there in that regard. We need safety long-term. Caleb Downs, pound for pound, might be the best player in the class. I know people like Spencer Fano from Utah is another offensive tackle prospect. You move on from Tyreek Hill, there's Jordan Tyson, redshirt junior wide receiver from Arizona State. Big body guy, 6'2", 200 pounds. He's got a little physicality element that the Dolphins do not have. Tight end position, if you end up drafting more in the middle of the first round, Kenyon Sadiq. is an absolute freak of a player who will block you to the moon. Cornerbacks, Jermon McCoy, big corner, a really impressive player from everything that I've seen with McCoy. I think you've got Avian Terrell, AJ Terrell, related to AJ Terrell, a cornerback at Clemson, not a bigger player. Mansour Delane at LSU, big time ball skills at cornerback. You have a corner you could pick. If quarterback ends up being the play, you get John Mateer from Oklahoma, who I'm a big fan of. Not guaranteed to come out, however. You got Garrett Nussmeier, the most cerebral and polished of the quarterbacks in this year's class. You've got Lenore Sellers. You got potentially Dante Moore, a redshirt sophomore from Oregon, formerly of UCLA, who has been balling out. He's going to play Drew Aller in Penn State in a big-time matchup this weekend on Saturday. You want something to watch? There's some tools guys at quarterback. There's a lot of names. This is a really good class for the Dolphins if they end up being in the position to pick high. Thing that I think you're going to have at your disposal a lot of attractive options for talent that you could place amongst the pre-existing, like, people we perceive to be as solutions and not problems. And as long as you draft by volume, please draft by volume. Add more picks every year. Don't go 2 years and make 8 draft picks in 2 years. Draft 10, 12 players every year. Every year, you should have that much volume, in my opinion, to make sure you are properly stocking the pond. Are you going to have sunk cost? Sure. And if you get a certain year where you're confident with it, can you do it for 1 year where you offload a 5 or a 4 for a vet with a mature contract with a short shelf life and bring them in and not have guarantees in years 3 and 4 of that contract? Yeah, you could do that. The best teams of consistently staying competitive, they have a model and they don't cut corners. It's the thing that I think. It's going to do it for us here today on the show, Kyle Krabs. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. We'll be back again tomorrow with the crossover Thursday with John Butchko. I hope to see you then. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you all again soon.